Hi everyone, thanks for tuning in to our channels for Plant-Based Eating Made Simple. This is Jordan Tucker, a senior in nutrition and dietetics, and she will be completing her supervised practice rotations and Purdue's coordinated program this coming fall. Jordan is also working toward becoming a certified health coach because she wants to help others to balance their lifestyle factors for positive health outcomes. She has many food service experiences, from being a dietary aide to a Starbucks barista, and she was even a student cook for Purdue Dining and Catering. Jordan is here today to help inform about the importance of eating whole foods as opposed to processed foods on a plant-based diet.
And this is Lydia Connor. She is also a senior in nutrition and dietetics who will also be completing her internship through the coordinated program next year. Lydia has worked as a kitchen manager in the Lyles Porter Food Demonstration Kitchen, and she has also interned at Gleaner's Food Bank in Indianapolis, where she planned nutrition education lessons for kids. Lydia has also worked in a healthcare facility as a food and nutrition associate. Today, Lydia wants to talk about the plant-based diets and the different types, and she wants to help reduce misconceptions that all plant-based diets have to be completely animal product free.
Today we'll be talking about the different types of plant-based eating, common concerns, preparing a balanced meal, and making homemade baked falafel. But first we want to hear what plant-based eating means to you. And since we can't be together in person today, we were hoping that everybody would comment below what your idea is of plant-based eating and what it means to you. We actually conducted a survey on this, and it included varying answers. Some people said that plant-based eating excludes meat, some people said it excludes meat and dairy, and other people said it's eating primarily plants. While these are all correct, it's important to find the plant-based diet that works best for you. A plant-based diet focuses on whole foods. Whole foods are foods made with minimal processing, and they're very nutrient dense. These include fruits, vegetables, nuts, beans, and legumes. A vegan diet excludes all animal products. A vegetarian diet excludes meat. And a flexitarian diet has emphasis on plants, but it also allows for dairy and meat in smaller amounts.
In a study on atherosclerotic risk communities from the Journal of the American Heart Association, it was found that individuals who consumed a mostly plant-based diet with whole foods had a lower risk for cardiovascular disease and mortality. Individuals were separated into groups based off of the type of plant-based diet they were consuming, being healthy plant-based, which is a higher consumption of whole grains, fruits, vegetables, and beans, and a less healthy plant-based diet being those who consumed higher amounts of processed foods and refined carbohydrates like fruit juices, desserts, and white flour products. This is one example showing how consuming a higher amount of whole plant-based foods is vital for good health. There will be a few links in the down bar with studies related to plant-based eating if you're interested. Take a moment to comment down below what your concerns are when it comes to eating a plant-based diet. Whether it's meeting your nutrient needs, recipes, or meal preparation, let us know and we could potentially address it in a future video. In our surveys and interviews that we conducted, we found that the biggest concern for people was macro and micronutrient needs. Macronutrient being protein and micro being B vitamins and iron. It's really easy to meet these needs when consuming a plant-based diet if you create a balanced meal. A balanced meal has your carbohydrates, your proteins, and your fats. One micronutrient of concern for people was iron, but there are actually two different types of iron. There's heme iron, which comes only from animal sources, and then there's non-heme iron, which comes from plant-based sources. And non-heme iron is actually what most of us consume and get the most of our dietary iron from. Sources of non-heme iron include beans, whole wheat breads, some leafy greens, lentils.
Another nutrient of concern is calcium. Foods with calcium include calcium-fortified soy milk, calcium-fortified breakfast cereals and orange juice, tofu made with calcium sulfate, and some of your dark leafy greens.
People are also often concerned about zinc, and sources of zinc include wheat germ, zinc-fortified breakfast cereals, pumpkin seeds, and beans. And beans are also really great when consuming a plant-based diet because they're very versatile and you can put them in a lot of different dishes. but they also are loaded with micronutrients. They help you meet your protein needs when consuming this type of diet, and they also have a lot of fiber.
Lastly, I wanted to mention vitamin B12. Vitamin B12 is fortified in cereals, soy milk, veggie burgers, and nutritional yeast. And if you're vegetarian and you still eat milk and eggs, you can get a lot of vitamin B12 from those milk products and the eggs.
Today we wanted to show you guys how to create a Buddha bowl, mainly because it is a quick and easy way to pack in all of the nutrients you need and also just create a balanced plate. This is something that I often do when I'm at school, just because you can throw together a Buddha bowl, and it's very simple. You just prep up some ingredients at the beginning of the week, whether it's your rice, your potatoes, and you can throw it together.
There are many options when it comes to getting all the protein you need from plants. You can get protein from beans, lentils, tofu, falafel, nuts, and even whole grains. In grocery stores, there are an abundance of meat substitutes you can find, including veggie burgers, veggie meatballs, orange chicken, and even chicken tenders. But even though these are convenient, you should be using them sparingly because they have a lot of additives and added sodium from processing.
Here are a couple vegetarian protein options I have gotten from the freezer section at my local grocery store. The ones on the left replace hamburger patties, while the ones on the right replace meatballs. I've also tried black bean burgers, orange chicken, and chicken tenders. These were all super nice to keep on hand in my freezer at school because they last forever, they are super quick and easy to warm up after a long day, and they honestly taste really good. As I mentioned before, these convenient options offer quite a bit of protein. One patty is a serving size, which offers 16 grams of protein. However, this is also 340 milligrams of sodium, which is 15% of your daily value. These meatballs offer 14 grams of protein for 3 meatballs, which contains 380 milligrams of sodium, which is 17% of your daily value. If you're going to eat these, it's best to mind the portion sizes, otherwise it can be easy to overdo it with your daily sodium.
I also wanted to mention complementary proteins. Amino acids are the building blocks of proteins, and we need essential amino acids to be found in our food because our bodies can't make many or any of them at all. However, we need all of them to rebuild our muscles and repair our body tissues efficiently. Animal sources of protein contain all these essential amino acids. However, plant-based sources of protein might lack one or more of them. And this is why we need complementary proteins. These provide in combination all the essential amino acids that we need, and an example of this would be rice and beans. But there are a ton of other combinations that you can choose from.
Today we will be showing you how to make homemade baked falafel. Falafel is a combination of chickpeas, fresh herbs, and spices. We'll also be posting the directions into the video so that you can screenshot them and use them later whenever you create this recipe. Preheat the oven to 375 degrees Fahrenheit before beginning preparation. We used canned chickpeas, and you want to make sure that you rinse them before using them, and then dry them off as much as possible. If you prefer to use dried chickpeas, allow them to soak overnight before using. They will also need to be dried off prior to use. Feel free to switch out the spices with others that you may like better, but don't add too many, as this will cause the falafel to be dry in the end. We used 1 cup of cilantro, but if you prefer parsley or basil, you can switch that out as well. If you use jarred minced garlic, be sure to note that 1 clove is equal to 1/2 teaspoon. We used 2 teaspoons since the recipe calls for 4 garlic cloves. We also wanted to add that prior to preparation, the recipe calls for 2 tablespoons of olive oil on the pan. But make sure that the pan is coated to prevent the falafel from sticking. Cooking new recipes is all about trial and error for your own preferences, so don't be afraid to step out of your comfort zone and try something new.
When I chop an onion, I first chop the onion in half through the ends. This gives me a flat surface to work with so it doesn't wobble around while I'm trying to chop it. I would recommend trying this with any round vegetable you are working with. This will also leave the root of the onion as something for me to hold on to keep the onion sturdy while I chop. Then I lay the onion on the cutting board and make sure it's in a comfortable spot where I have enough space to work with the knife. I choose a sharp knife like this one, which actually reduces the risk of making the mistake of cutting myself. I chop along the height of the onion as it is laying on the cutting board, but I don't go all the way through to the root. This will make the slices thinner at the end. Then I cut along the length of the onion. The onion has lines of its own that you can follow if you slice it this way. Again, I don't go all the way through to the root because I want the onion to be attached until the final step of chopping. I'm chopping pretty coarsely today because all of my onion pieces will be going straight into the food processor. Notice how I'm still holding onto the root. This is keeping everything steady so I don't let anything move around on the cutting board, and I won't hurt myself either. If I needed the slices to be any smaller, I would just go around again and chop the pieces, but for today's purpose, this will be sufficient. To clean my cilantro, I soak it. I put it all in a big bowl and run cold water over it until it is all submerged. Then I leave it to soak for 5 to 10 minutes. This removes any dirt that might have been left on the leaves. After letting it soak, I strain the water away and let it drain in the basket of a salad spinner. Then I transfer it to the bowl of a salad spinner, which happens to be the one I used to soak the cilantro in. I spin the cilantro a few times, which removes a lot of the excess water. This helps later in the falafel preparation so that the falafel patties don't have too much moisture. After that, I take the cilantro to my cutting board, where I place each piece with the stems going in the same direction. This can take a few minutes. I then roll the cilantro and chop it coarsely. Again, these are going into the food processor today, so it's not really necessary to make fine chops. Once I get down to where the rest is stems, I pick off any remaining larger leaves from the bottom of the stems, take out any bigger stems from the leaf pile, and compost the stems that I am getting rid of. It's okay to eat some of the stems. Some people prefer not to because of the texture. But since the texture will be blended into the falafel mixture, it's a huge time saver to just leave some of the stems there.
So as I said earlier, bootables are something that I create often in college just because I'm always on the go. And this is really great for anyone who has a busy schedule. We recommend meal prepping because it is a great way to meet all of your nutrient needs without feeling like you have to cook a big meal every single day. Foods that are good to prep ahead of time would be rice, potatoes, tofu, certain vegetables depending on your preferences, and sauces. Foods that you probably shouldn't prepare ahead of time would be beans, fruit and vegetable cuts, fresh herbs because they get soggy, and certain vegetables, once again, depending on your preferences. I know for me personally, if it isn't prepped ahead of time, I'm just not gonna eat it. When I'm stressed out, the last thing that I wanna do is come home and cook a big meal. So I like to prepare things at the beginning of the week. I normally take 1 to 2 days a week and I'll prep foods for about an hour or two, and then that will last me a few days, if not the whole week. And it really helps a lot.
So I made a couple things ahead of time for our bootables, and these include quinoa and roasted sweet potato. For the quinoa, you use about a cup of quinoa, you rinse the quinoa really well, and then you combine the quinoa with 2 cups of water in a saucepan, and then you'll bring that to a boil over high heat, and then once it comes to a boil, you'll reduce the heat, cover it, and let it cook and absorb the water for about 15 to 20 minutes. The sweet potatoes I diced, tossed them in olive oil, and added salt and pepper, but you can get creative with whatever spices you have. And I usually just put those in the oven at 400 for about 25 to 30 minutes.
Finished product?
Thank goodness, we were scheduled to film during lunchtime and we both forgot to eat, so we are starving and it's 3:30 in the afternoon, so cheers.
It's simple to create a balanced plate with a bootable because you can add all of your favorite foods. Remember that a balanced plate consists of carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. Sources of fats include oils, dressings, and guacamole. Guacamole is one of my favorite toppings to put on a bowl. You then add in your protein source, whether it's plant or animal based. Adding in grains, fruits, and vegetables count as your carbohydrates. The base can be any type of grain or salad. Great options include brown rice, couscous, chickpeas, lentils, or whole grain pasta. You can also use spinach or kale. Topping choices are listed here, but they aren't limited to this list. Allow yourself to experiment with foods and get creative. It'll help make this transition easier.
There are many options when it comes to eating a plant-based diet. Strive to include protein, carbohydrates, and fat into every meal. Start experimenting with different sources of plant-based protein, and try to get as much of a variety as possible from all the colors of fruits and vegetables. Lastly, remember that not all animal products have to be excluded on every plant-based diet.
Thank you all for tuning in to our virtual demo. We hope that you guys were able to get some beneficial information about going plant-based. And I also hope that you're able to find the right plant-based diet for yourself. Let us know if you tried the recipe and if you made any modifications to it, because we'd love to hear it.
Lastly, we have a link in our description below with a handout we made with all the information we discussed today, as well as some other resources. We're so glad you decided to watch our video today. If you enjoyed it, please give it a like and subscribe to both of our channels.